So scrolling through YouTube, I've been served this new video from a guy called James Hargreaves, the funniest two-song gig in UK music history. And from the preview message, I can see this is about Daphne and Celeste at Reading Festival. Was it 2000 or 2001? So let's have a look what James has to say for himself.
In August 2000, the swagger of Britpop had diminished somewhat from the dizzying heights of the 90s, and the American alternative scene was on the rise in the UK.
Yeah, the tail end of Britpop, let's say 97, 98, 99, it was full-on lad culture. That was my cohort. That was when I went to university in 1998, a year late. That was what was all around me. You had, Britpop, indie, lads. That was mainstream culture, basically, at this point. There was clubbing culture, but, the lad culture was really mainstream at this point. I think the most mainstream it ever got. But a couple of years underneath me, the year after and the year after next, everyone suddenly liked it's pop metal music, or punk, like pop punk music. They had tattoos, they had piercings, they had skateboards. It was a whole different scene. It was one of those moments between generations. And going to Reading festivals is one of the times that you could really notice that this was a thing that was going on.
New punk bands like Blink-182 and new metal bands like Limp Bizkit and Slipknot were heading up the latest musical movement. And just a glance at the lineup for one of the biggest rock festivals in the country that year, Reading and Leeds, kind of says it all. The Stereophonics, Pulp and Oasis are still headlining, but look at who is just below them on the bill. Foo Fighters and Limp Bizkit appear, as do Deftones and Idlewild. But the heaviest lineup was this one. And you might notice something a little bit incongruous about the list of bands performing on the main stage here. At the bottom is an act that most UK indie lads, metalheads and moshers might not have been all that familiar with, called Daphne and Celeste.
This is true that they may not have been familiar with them. I think focus on the charts had disappeared at this stage for most people like this. But they were pretty well known. They'd had a couple of hits at this stage. The first I heard about them would be in the end of 1999. Just moved into my student house. We had MTV and MTV2, and they had played the first video for Ooh Stick You, and I liked it. I went out and bought it. And then later in the year, that wasn't a hit at the time, but then at the beginning of 2000 they actually got into the charts and they started having some minor hits.
At this time, the Reading and Leeds festivals really could just border on anarchy, Leeds in particular. Today's story, in fact, takes place in that same era when one of the Leeds festivals was about to get permanently shut down and moved, with armed police and helicopters coming in because everyone was burning and rioting, literally for no reason whatsoever.
I mean, it's true. We did used to have that last day of chaos, the last night of chaos every year. I remember huge fires at Reading breaking out. And even not at Reading, at other festivals I went to, you'd have people like pulling down all the lights on the last day, pushing over the portable toilets with people inside. There was a feeling of it's the last night, so let's wreck the site, that was going around. I wouldn't say it was violent, really. It was just kind of it wasn't violent towards people, at least. I think it was just chaos, the enjoyment of the chaos there. That was all it was, as far as I could see. But I could see why, that when the fires got out of control, then that was when the police had to be called at Leeds. And I understand it's not like this at festivals anymore, because there's such an expensive layout for people in the first place. It's not going to happen. But I think a lot of this does tie into the kind of swaggering lad culture at the time. That there was an element of that going on, perhaps.
Daphne and Celeste, by contrast, were a saccharine American teenage girl pop duo who sang and danced to backing tracks, with music aimed primarily at preteen girls.
Daphne and Celeste were essentially a kind of Trojan horse, you could say. They were kind of an art project in the guise of a pop band. The people involved were not just churning out products, they were making transgressive music in perhaps a way which didn't appear obvious to, metal fans, because they weren't using any of the signifiers, the anguished vocals, the distorted guitars or anything of alternative music. But nevertheless, if you listen to their songs, Who Stick You, their first single is an obvious example, because it's obvious that stick is a substitution for the F word, and it's just a load of people they wish would F off. And they made kind of enjoyable pop songs, and it was a funny joke as well. That was the deal. And we saw the headline act there is Stereophonics, and I would challenge you to find anything as funny as Who Stick You in any Stereophonics lyric, really.
They were an American band, but only really focused on the UK, having had a few small hits, the best known being Who Stick You, which got to number 8 in the UK in 1999, and UGLY, which hit number 18 in 2000. They were not good, even by the dismal standards of preteen pop.
Yeah, you can say that, and you can have the smug look on your face, but I thought they were good, and, I know it's all subjective, but screw you, basically. Stick you.
And despite where they're listed on the poster, they weren't just on the main stage really, really early on as some kind of almost DJ set warm-up. They were on right before Blink 182. As the Quietus put it, booking Daphne and Celeste as a warm-up for Slipknot and Rage Against the Machine is a bit like screening Care Bears 2 at the beginning of WrestleMania. Now, many people have looked at their booking at Reading and Leeds that year as the ridiculous but hilarious move of some daft bugger of a manager, but it actually wasn't. It was down to them. They apparently used the press to kind of trick their way into a slot because they wanted to meet Eminem. It's written in pop history. The duo lied their way into getting a slot, all because Celeste wanted to meet Eminem, who later dropped out of performing. Apparently, as was fairly typical, they'd just been saying outrageous stuff in the press to get people talking about them, and it seems that they had been telling reporters all that year that they were going to be playing at Reading even though they hadn't been booked. But the story, probably because it was so ridiculous, got so much traction that petitions were actually started to get them on the bill. And by June the 15th of that year, they were successful. And just to give you some idea of how little crossover there was between Daphne and Celeste's world and Reading and Leeds, they'd been on tour supporting Steps that year. However, they clearly did know exactly what they were getting themselves into.
The, dichotomy he's setting up here between the pop world and the alternative world isn't one which is self-evident and natural. It's one that was engineered from the other side as much as anything. We've had in the late 90s a few years of this kind of vaguely subversive bubblegum music, lots of which is really good and definitely better than the kind of lots of the alternative or late period Britpop music that was still popular. And it seemed to me at the time, and it seems to me now, that the thing that was turning a lot of people off that music wasn't so much to do with the qualities of the music, which, like I say, was often excellent. It was to do with the where they wanted to position themselves. This is a time when a high school or secondary school was very tribal. You defined yourself by what kind of music you were into, and I know from meeting younger people now, it's not so much like that now. Yeah, you would not talk to people, you would not associate with people, you would not you'd be kind of against people based on the way they dressed and the music they listened to. It was very sharply divided at this point, and I think these groups would never have been given a chance just you say, like they went on tour with Steps. Yeah, if you were like a lad who was seen listening to Steps, that would be you would never hear the end of it in terms of banter, let's say. Yeah. So this isn't something from nature. This is something that was artificially added.
When asked by a fan website what they were expecting at Reading, Daphne responded, "Part of me thinks we need to wear bulletproof vests and helmets. It will definitely be an experience." So, in the run-up to Reading and Leeds, because everyone, including them, knew that this was just some mad bit of drama, this was just a loony publicity stunt, the festival organisers put them, therefore, right in the middle of the heaviest lineup of the whole festival. They were scheduled literally right before Blink-182, Rage Against the Machine and Slipknot. Because all of this had been played out and amped up in the press, people knew the score, they knew what was coming, so they brought loads and loads of food and other throwable items to the set. Daphne and Celeste's first festival performance, however, wasn't at Reading, it was at Leeds. The boisterous US pop duo got their first bottling at Leeds Festival. Their surprise booking did hold out the intriguing prospect of a meeting with Brian Molko, who they had delighted in mocking in the music press. Daphne and Celeste did manage to complete their 3-song set at Leeds, despite the bottling. Reading was a different story altogether, however. They came on stage wearing t-shirts with 2 different messages. Celeste came on wearing a t-shirt that said, "Who the fuck is Eminem?" Obviously a reference to all the talk about him that had been in the press. But Daphne came on wearing a different t-shirt that said, "I love Brian." This was a reference to Brian Molko from Placebo, who was also on the bill at the festival, whom they had, for no reason other than just trying to generate press, previously described as ugly in the realm of the beast.
Yeah, they put out controversial statements. They put out provoking statements to the press. Just for having fun. You know, I mean, I noticed this guy's not making a video about the things Oasis came out with in the late 90s, you know, for example, which were much more, you know, not gently teasing, but, you know, genuinely aggressive and mean. And if you look at the interviews of any of these bands, they're going to be, many of these bands, they're going to be saying, you know, bad things. They were having fun. They were playing a game here, and that they knew they were going to get a reaction. You know, I don't think that means that it's a fun game on both sides.
They were meant to play their 3-song set right before Blink-182, but as many people already know, that set did not go down very well.
They're not 50. There's one person that likes us. Or maybe they're just being sarcastic and they're going to kill us.
I was at the festival working. We used to work at a cafe at the backstage area. So we were feeding the crew, not the acts, I should say. They had their own food, the act. So yeah, I was not really engaged with the music press at the time. I'd stopped reading music press a year or so earlier. It was kind of a surprise to me that they were playing. A nice surprise at first, and then as I started to see around me the kind of anger at them, wasn't such a nice surprise. I kind of looked around me and saw all these kind of from like the same age as me or a couple of years younger, so a mixture of kind of post Britpop, lad culture, and supposedly new alternative types. Just, you know, genuinely angry, genuinely furious. At what? At what? You know, Blink-182 are on afterwards. Are they like a hardcore, extreme, authentic metal act? Come on now, come on.
Here's how the BBC reported what happened. Forget Rage Against the Machine, Slipknot and Oasis. When it comes to working the Reading Festival crowd up into a frenzy, Daphne and Celeste take the biscuit. And the rotten tomatoes, eggs, bottles of water and worse. Even Tom Jones's surprise guest appearance with the Stereophonics for Sunday night's climax couldn't match them for audience reaction. The American teenage duo's appearance on stage was greeted with a hail of missiles and abuse from the crowd, the likes of which has probably not been seen at Reading since Meat Loaf was bottled off in 1988. They were only scheduled to sing to their backing tape for 15 minutes, but their performance will be infamous for years to come. On the bits of video footage we do have, you can hear the crowd chanting off, off, off so loud that it's literally competing with the festival PA system.
So that was me in the middle of that somewhere, and I'm sorry to say the two friends I was with got caught up in it and started showing stuff as well. I don't think they specifically had anything against them, but it was, it was mayhem. We want to join in with the mayhem. I think that was their attitude towards it. And I mean, but what I saw at the time were like two young girls who were presenting something different to what the crowd were expecting, and the crowd's response was violence. I genuinely think that a lot of the people there were hoping to injure them. That was how it felt, looking around me. It wasn't funny. Like what I object to about this video is, so far, is the title. It wasn't funny. It was appalling to look around me and see these people who I kind of had thought were my people.
Here's how The Guardian reported it. Reading Festival 2000, and on the main stage one of the most punk rock performances in living memory is taking place. But it's not Rage Against the Machine or Slipknot, or any of the other supposedly punk acts on the bill. It's the pop duo Daphne and Celeste, two teenage girls who have gatecrashed the festival bill in order to sing chipmunk pop songs called Ooh Stick You and UGLY to a field of disgruntled metalheads. Faced with a barrage of bottles of urine and various other hurled items, shoes, clothing, and even a bag of meat, the girls don't just refuse to leave the stage, but positively revel in the madness. The volume and size of objects coming their way only grew. Flares, camping chairs, a bag of meat, and even a wheelchair were just some of the things recorded as having gone airborne during their mercifully short set. Daphne and Celeste ended up abandoning their set after just 2 songs because the crowd were turning violent. Just listen to the roar of rage, booing, and yelling when they finish UGLY.
You guys are wasting so much food. What I have to say is they are amazing for putting up with that and showing that to us. Who's not amazing is the crowd. That's who's not amazing. That's what's not funny.
After having blagged, lied, and tricked their way onto the bill in the first place, I've no idea what they were expecting, but apparently they and some of their family who'd come to watch came off stage pretty upset.
Yeah, great, very funny, smug twat. Yeah, they were upset. I mean, blanked, stole their way into the festival bill. I don't know how much you know about how festival bookings work in the first place. It's not a lot less legitimate than the way any band is booked for a festival, basically. I don't know how you can sit there and say it's stolen or blagged. They got on a festival bill, and it was scheduled in a hostile way, let's say, against a lot of other bands with very different fan base. A fan base, it turned out, of twats. He's looking so pleased with himself that they were hit by objects and upset, and that their family were upset. What is wrong with you? What's the moral failing that they've done here? They've exposed a crowd of supposedly alternative kids to being violent misogynists, okay? Come on now.
I've got messages from people saying it was the most fun they'd ever had at a festival, Celeste said. After a bit of discussion, the duo agree there was something beautiful about the way so many people came together, united in their hatred of the band. Although maybe we'd feel differently if we got hit, laughs Celeste. Your mum did get hit, Daphne reminds her. Oh yeah, because of course we invited our families along, not thinking at all how it would be for them. When we came off, my sister was crying. It wasn't just bottles the girls were dodging. As Daphne points out, at Reading someone threw a wheelchair at them. It took like 3 people to get it up there, says Celeste. Someone lost their mobility because they hated us so much. Slipknot frontman Corey Taylor was actually in the audience with some mates at the time, and he said this about it in Ed Gamble and James Acaster's excellent podcast. The link is in the description if you'd like to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know what's fucked up about Leeds and Reading at that time was I was out in the audience when it started getting bottled. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Was
Daphne and Celeste.
Daphne and Celeste, yeah. Oh my God, dude. I was out there, I was hanging out with some friends of mine, and then, dude, it was like the fucking seas opened, and it just like came out of nowhere. I was like, oh shit. And then I went backstage, and dude, they were bawling. They were bawling their eyes out. And I was like, hey, you did something that a lot of people wouldn't have done. You stayed in there, so hold your head high. And
I was 15 at the time and in the audience, and fully believed at the time they deserved the bottling. Now as an adult, I do not. But
well,
if you told me as a 15-year-old, you know who's consoling them backstage right now? Corey Taylor. I'd be like, what
the fuck?
Apparently, in fact, all 3 of the much heavier bands that were on right after them gathered round them and told them they were absolutely badass for persevering. After getting themselves together, Daphne and Celeste actually sat down and did an interview with a show called CD UK, where, fair play to them, they acted like they couldn't give a shit, they had a laugh, and they would be back.
I'm here with Daphne and Celeste, have just come off stage at the Reading Festival in one piece, girls.
Yes.
It was good. I had a smile on my face the whole time. I thought it was so good.
That was a good effort. I did see the big grins despite the stuff being chucked. I mean, what's it all about?
It was cool that they were doing stuff.
It was pretty exciting, actually. I mean, to have people actually like hate you so much that they throw things at you repeatedly.
But you've had a good time at the festival. Yeah, you're gonna come back. All in all, it's cool. If Eminem comes next year, my ass is here again.
Okay. Hey, yeah, I mean, it was a cool experience, Maybe we'll become a regular here at the Reading Festival. Well, enjoy the rest of the festival. Have a wander around. And we'll maybe see you here again.
Okay.
All right, cheers. Bye.
And so ended what I consider one of the funniest gigs in UK history.
Yeah, like I say, it might have been funny from a pranking viewpoint. I don't know. I don't agree it's funny at all, to be honest. One thing I should add here is that wasn't really the end of the day. They had an appearance at the signing tent, which was just about in view of the main stage. Maybe a couple of hours later, because I was working in that restaurant, I was kept taking shortcuts around backstage, and I headed in just next to it so I could see them, and I kind of walked in with them. As soon as they came out at the signing tent, it started again. People started running up and throwing stuff at them at close range, and then they had to just duck straight out the gate again into the backstage area. People who would throw objects at girls from close range because they're playing a different kind of music, and not even playing it at the moment. They're just daring to be in this male space, yeah?
But am I being a bastard here? Was this genuinely hilarious, or was it a callous, cold-hearted, mindless act of bullying? I don't think so. Daphne and Celeste knew exactly what they were getting themselves in for, as shown by their comments in the run-up to the festival. They, no doubt, with the involvement of their management...
It was hyperbole. What the bloody hell? I mean, they didn't literally expect... I mean, you could see how upset they were by it afterwards. That's not what they literally expected. They expected like some kind of hostility, that's for sure. But they didn't expect that.
Engineered this through the press. They did it on purpose. But here's the thing. Had they not played Reading and Leeds, Daphne and Celeste would have been just another unremarkable pop duo that faded away into obscurity after one or two minor hits.
It's not true. It's not true at all. I mean, it's for you. That's why you think they're notable. I mean, for me, they had. About 10 years ago, one of the best albums, the 21st century. That they had made an album with Max Tundra that is incredible. One of my favourite albums. They were in a manufactured pop band, but so much of the great music all of history is manufactured pop, and so much terrible music is by alternative musos. Yeah, this is not their claim to fame, as far as I'm concerned. It's just their claim to fame as far as you're concerned.
As it actually happened, however, the most unlikely act imaginable has somehow found its way into the annals of true rock and roll legend, and it's entirely because of this gig. But here's the real kicker for me. Daphne, and possibly both of them, look back and view this, apparently, as the high point of their careers, saying, backstage, Slipknot and Rage Against the Machine were coming up to us and telling us how hardcore we were, how they wouldn't have stayed out there. It was definitely the best thing we did, our crowning achievement. And she's right.
You look at all of these quotes he's using, you can see the link at the bottom, and it's to press they did for their new single and album, which he's not talking about, which is amazing, so good, and like the fact that he hasn't even bothered to check it out tells you a lot here.
It was. The gig was so demented and hilarious that here we are, still talking about it 25 years later.
You're the one talking about it.
Brutal though it was nonetheless, in my opinion, a genius move by everyone involved, including the two lasses themselves. It may have been brief, and Christ it was messy, but Daphne and Celeste had just written their names into Reading Festival lore forever. Sadly, the full footage of that gig has not yet been made available on YouTube that I could find, but it's definitely out there somewhere. It was filmed and recorded properly in its entirety. So if you have that footage, get it remastered and get it online. Of course, if you can do so legally, because I want to watch the whole gig and I want to see that wheelchair being thrown on stage. And because that short 10-minute gig remains, in my opinion, the single funniest two-song gig in the entirety of British rock and roll history.
I still don't know what it is you find so funny about seeing your supposed alternative people resorting to fury and violence against women. I still don't know. What is so funny about that? You're obviously not taking their side. You've been insulting them through the whole video. But, I guess you just hate women. I guess that's what it comes down to. You hate women, you hate pop music because it's associated with young women. You offering me an alternative explanation here? I'm not seeing one.